the channel. Yesterday somebody posted a comment to ask whether we could possibly look at pedal independence, at managing to train our pedal playing to make it more independent from the hands. And that's a really important question, and I thought perhaps we could have a look at that today. My very first reaction to it, my reply to that post, was to learn all Bach's Schübler chorale preludes. And actually I stand by that immediate response. There's several reasons why I would suggest the Schübler preludes. First of all, they are trio format, so therefore the pedal part is very independent from the hands. Trio sonatas and the like are always very independent from that point of view. And these pieces, the Schübler chorale preludes, are less demanding, obviously, than Bach's 6 trio sonatas, but at the same time they do develop the same sort of skills. Secondly, I often recommend people who have learned the whole of Orgelbüchlein and want something to carry on with, that they go on to the Schüblers, because they're a little bit longer than the Orgelbüchlein and they develop slightly different skill sets. And in addition, they're rather nice pieces. As a set, they're something of an oddity. They're arrangements of cantata movements, all of them other than one recognizably from movements that we know, and they are published. They were published during Bach's lifetime, which is very unusual for Bach and especially for organ music. So why publish these particular works? It's very probable that the publisher himself, Schübler, published them as a sort of popular hits moneymaker. And indeed, although it says on the copy that they are sold by Bach and his sons, it's far from certain that Bach himself actually arranged them at all. The late Walter Emery, the man who edited Novello's revised edition of Bach's organ works, he had a very low opinion of these pieces. He was a formidable Bach scholar in his own right, and I respect his views enormously. But he really questioned whether these works should ever have been published or written. And I don't quite agree with him on that. I rather like them anyway. Most of them are very, very attractive pieces. My favourite of the set, and probably one of my favourite of Bach chorale preludes as a whole, is Kommst du nun Jesu vom Himmel herunter auf Erden, and that is quite late on in the set. Today, however, we're going to look at Wo soll ich fliehen hin, the second in the collection, which incidentally is the one piece in the set which doesn't have an identifiable source from which it was arranged. But presumably it was from a lost cantata or from a cantata movement that Bach had decided not to include in his cantata on the same chorale. The chorale itself, we've talked in Orgelbüchlein about how important it is to know the chorale texts. Wo soll ich fliehen hin? Where, to where or whither should I fly? That being obviously not an advert for Lufthansa, but an appeal to God, where should I get help from? In the case of the Schübler chorale preludes, it's probably less critical than in Orgelbüchlein, in the sense that they are not chorale preludes in the sense of introducing a hymn. They are more intended for pleasure or for concert performance or what have you. But nevertheless, it's still valuable to know what the chorale is about, more or less. The reason I'm choosing this particular chorale is it's a convenient length and it develops exactly the skills we're looking for. So let's get on with it. The pedals play the melody, the chorale melody, once through, a line at a time. You can, of course, play it heel and toe, but in this particular case, it works absolutely easily, alternate toes all the way through. Let's just start by going through that chorale melody and trying out that pedaling. So obviously when you're doing something like this, it's worth deciding absolutely and writing on the score even which foot you're going to use at any one time, as it saves that sort of element of indecision along the way. Of course, when we're learning a new piece, the very first thing we need to do is to decide how we want it to sound. What kind of tempo, what kind of registration, what kind of articulation, what kind of feel we want to put across. Because until we know that, we can't really start learning it, we can't start practicing it, we can't start trying to achieve what we want. So it's really worth making a pot of coffee and sitting down with the score at a table and running through it in your head and thinking, what do I actually want here? Should I, for example, make the semiquavers, should I articulate them in pairs, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, or should I make them da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and so on. And those crotchets and quavers, the longer notes in the left hand, are all going to want probably to be very slightly detached, certainly not legato, and in general, form an impression in your mind of what it is you're going to try to learn and practice so that you've got something to aim for. I think this kind of kitchen table practice is probably the most valuable work that you do at all. It's certainly not a waste of time. So let's look at the last 4 bars. There's no pedals here, so it's easier to get your head around. And there you can put into practice what you've decided about those semiquavers. That long minium F sharp that's tied over to a semiquaver, that's a prime example of a place where you're going to need a breath. If you were singing it, dee, da 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 dee da 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 dum, you would need to take a good breath there, and that we need to reproduce when we're playing. Then let's take the previous 3 bars. That's got the last line of the chorale melody in it, and so it's going to be slightly more complicated. But try it in a variety of ways. Try it obviously to begin with very slowly, and then as we speed it up a little bit, you can try it with, for example, dotted rhythms in the hands. You can try it with staccato in the hands. Try it from memory. Try it with your eyes closed. Try it in all kinds of different ways, and really try to get it built in and automated. And then when you're completely happy with those 3 bars, take the previous 3 bars, that's the penultimate line of the chorale melody, and do the same again. And you can obviously also vary slightly the attack of the pedals. So you can try making those staccato if you like, but in any event, practice not only playing the notes, but also practice playing them confidently in the pedals. So really feeling that you know where your feet are going and that you press the pedals very deliberately, not necessarily hard, but very deliberately. It sounds an odd thing to say, but if you practice being confident, then you will become more confident. And if we practice being independent between the pedals and the hands, then we will become more independent between the pedals and the hands. And now you can take the last 10 bars all in one go and play that until you're completely confident with it. I usually suggest taking pieces 1 bar at a time from the end and working backwards. Where we're playing a chorale melody like this with a pedal part which requires you to move from note to note, then it's actually more helpful usually to take it 1 line of chorale melody at a time, because you're trying to really get used to the idea of the pedals and where they're going. So that's probably better in this particular instance than playing it one bar at a time. But the same principle holds, that we definitely don't start at the beginning, see how far we can get, and learn that we're going to make mistakes and we're not going to be able to get through it. That's a very counterproductive way of practicing. So always work so far from the end as you can get to the end successfully and confidently. In terms of registration, we really want, obviously, a trio texture. The right hand and the left hand and the pedals all need an independent registration. In this score, it notes the left hand at 16-foot pitch and the right hand at 8-foot pitch and the pedals at 4-foot pitch. Those pitches are simply indications of the pitch of the notation in relation to what you hear. They're not stop directions. So where it says 16-foot, then it would be obvious to use 16 and 8-foot stops, possibly even a 4-foot stop. And similarly in the right hand, where it says 8-foot, that is telling you the pitch. You can use an 8 and 4-foot, and in the pedal, 4-foot pitch. On this particular organ, we're very fortunate that we've got a beautiful 16-foot flute and 8-foot flute on the first manual. And we have a 4-foot chorale bass or something similar in the pedals, but that's not quite strong enough to support the whole texture. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to couple the pedals through to the second manual just to make sure that we've got enough sound, which of course means that I have to play both the parts on the same manual for the hands. You can do it even at 8-foot pitch because the hands don't cross. But on this organ, I'm going to play I'm going to use a 16-foot and 8-foot flutes on the lower manual and play the left hand at pitch and play the right hand an octave higher, which will then give us slightly different sounds for the two hands. So the left hand will be 16 and 8-foot flutes and the right hand will be effectively 8 and 4-foot flutes. And that works very well indeed. So in terms of developing pedal technique and pedal independence, trios are the way to go. Left-handed pedal is also very useful for any piece because it feels so odd. It is surprisingly difficult to play left-handed pedals. It's almost easier to play both hands and pedals together. And so left-handed pedal trains part of the brain which we don't normally use somehow or other. But a variety of articulations, a variety of techniques, varying things, and as I say, although it sounds a little bit zany, practicing being confident, practicing the feeling that we can actually do it. All these things will help to develop pedal independence. So when you finish this piece, go on and do all the others in Schübler, and then move on to the Bach Trio Sonatas if you feel up to it. All that kind of playing is essential and is also great fun. So I really hope that you enjoy these Schübler pieces. As I say, I do, even though some authors are rather disparaging about them.